Good to have you with us this morning. Hurricane Adalia is rapidly intensifying as it closes in on Florida's Gulf Coast.
Millions of Floridians are under hurricane warnings, and officials in the state are urging those in the eye of the storm to evacuate. The National Weather Service says this storm should be taken seriously. It is warning parts of the west coast of Florida and the Florida Panhandle could see life-threatening storm surge, hurricane-force winds, and flash flooding. The Tampa International Airport has officially closed ahead of the storm, with commercial flights stopping after midnight. Crews there are working to secure jet bridges, equipment, and aircrafts. And Floridians are bracing themselves for the potentially life-threatening storm. They're making last-minute preparations, gassing up their cars, shoring up their homes, businesses, even boats, ahead of tomorrow's expected landfall.
We've been extremely lucky here in Tampa and have been bypassed by bad ones. And I'm just afraid that our luck is going to run out.
We're tracking the storm for you all morning, bringing you the latest forecast and updates from officials. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson is in Cedar Key, Florida. That's where we're going to start right now. Hey, Priscilla, good morning.
Yeah, Savannah, good morning. This is what the waterfront here in Cedar Key looks like today. It is boarded up windows up and down the street as residents here are up early, continuing those storm preps, bracing for this hurricane, and they are racing against the clock. They have until 4 p.m. today to get out.
A life-threatening storm barreling towards Florida's Gulf Coast. As residents brace for impact this morning, Adalia is now a major hurricane.
How bad do you think the storm is going to be?
It looks like he's going to be a big one. Even some of our old locals are pretty concerned at this point.
Adalia expected to produce dangerous winds of up to 115 miles per hour, ushering in a potentially deadly 12-foot storm surge.
We now have 5,500 National Guardsmen activated and available.
There are tens of thousands of linemen that will be staged. The goal is to get the power restored as quickly as possible.
Florida residents and the Coast Guard urgently preparing for the impending hurricane, boarding up homes and businesses, stocking up on supplies, and filling sandbags to protect against storm surge. Some Florida communities still recovering after being battered by Hurricane Ian less than a year ago.
I've got one window that has a small leak. I am, believe it or not, duct taping that, just trying to get ready for this one.
And the governor has issued a state of emergency for 46 of the state's 67 counties, including this one. FEMA is also pre-positioned in the state, and we are seeing dozens of school districts closing schools across the western part of the state and the Panhandle. The Tampa airport has now shut down, and officials here are really urging people to take this seriously and that today, now, is the time to act. Savannah?
All right, Priscilla, thank you so much. Stay safe.
Let's now bring in Harvey L. Ward Jr. He is the mayor of Gainesville, Florida. Mr. Mayor, good to have you with us. So I know you signed an executive order declaring a local state of emergency. First of all, what exactly does that mean for Gainesville, and what are you bracing for?
So thank you. Good morning. We're bracing for a Category 3 hurricane here in Gainesville. You know, the hope is that it doesn't happen that way, but we're Floridians. We know that we have to be prepared. We can't leave it to chance. Our folks are incredibly prepared. Our city staff, county staff, our sheriff's office, our police department, our fire response. We are prepared for this storm. Our people know what to do. But, you know, when we won't really know until it comes through. An executive order, an emergency declaration, essentially just gives us the opportunity to act during and after the storm with a little more latitude than we would normally have. It sounds like a much bigger deal than it is as an emergency declaration, but basically it just gives us a little more latitude locally to be able to get things done that need to be done in the moment that we might otherwise need to go through some local legislative work to accomplish.
Gainesville is a little bit inland from where we just saw Priscilla there along the coast. What are the top things you can do to prepare right now? Do you wish you had a little bit more time, or do you feel like you have enough time to get everything done?
So we always would like more time. I would love for us to have several more months before we have to worry about anything like this, but that's not the case. You know, we know how to prepare for a storm. in your home, in your business, that means be ready. Charge up your devices, charge up your batteries, make sure you've got supplies for a few days if, God forbid, the power goes out. Be ready to be self-sufficient for a few days. Check on your neighbors. Have a network of communication set up in your neighborhood and with friends and family who might not be local, so that so everybody knows you're home and safe and that you're well taken care of.
For you, what is your biggest concern? Is it more of a rain concern where you are, or do you still worry about the winds?
So we do worry about winds. Water is always a concern. It's usually the most destructive part of any storm like this. But we're a heavily forested community. We love our trees in Gainesville, and most of the time that's great. But we have not had a major storm come through in a very long time, and that means that our tree canopy is vulnerable. And if tree canopy is vulnerable, then the neighborhoods are vulnerable. So, we're asking folks to make sure you clear out anything that obviously could become a flying object during a storm. Clean the loose objects out of your front yard, your backyard. Bring them inside. Try to, if you see loose limbs or any of that sort of thing, try to get those cleared out before this evening when we need to be going inside and preparing indoors.
Yeah, so on top of that, in these final hours as Hurricane Adalia gets closer, what is just your primary message to people in and around Gainesville?
Be safe. Take this very, very seriously. Even if we see it veer off the current path that puts us in a very difficult position, don't let up. Take it very, very seriously until it is well north of us, because even after it passes, there could still be fertile ground for tornadoes and that sort of thing. Once the soil is soaked, then the trees could fall even without wind. So be very aware for the next several days, and until this storm is well past us, take it very, very seriously.
Gainesville Mayor Harvey L. Ward Jr., thanks for joining us this morning. Stay safe, and we'll keep in touch with you over the coming days.
Thank you so much.
Let's now bring in meteorologist Angie Lassman for more on our storm watch.
Yeah, Angie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. The mayor making some really good points about the tree canopy and such there. And just to put it into perspective for folks that live in that area, it's been since 1950, before that we've seen a Category 3 hurricane in this area. So a lot of folks not alive during that time may not know how to prepare. And we know that Florida is a hotspot for people to move to. So make sure that you do have those instructions from your local governments, officials, that you're heeding those warnings, especially when it comes to evacuations. Let's give you the rundown of exactly what's going on with Adalia, because we've seen some minor changes with that latest update that just came out. Winds now up to 80 miles per hour, sitting 135 miles southwest of the Dry Tortugas. That's just offshore of the Florida Keys. And you can see it's looking a little healthier. We're starting to see kind of an eye give a little bit of a peak. And it's moving at 14 miles per hour now, and it's expected to move even faster than that. So that's going to do a couple of things for us. It's still going to keep it over these really warm waters long enough for it to intensify and likely rapidly intensify. We need it to hit 35 mile per hour increase in a 24-hour time frame in order for it to be considered rapid intensification. And we're likely going to see that. It spends some time over that water, but the good news is that because of how fast it's moving, we likely will see less of an impact when it comes to rains. That doesn't mean there won't be an impact, because there still will be, but it'll also spend a little less time over that really warm water. It doesn't change the fact that we've got a Category 3 hurricane that's likely going to impact the Big Bend area. But if you're in that cone, then you need to be aware of exactly what's going on over the next couple of days. So let's talk about the rain. We've still got the potential to see up to a foot of rain in places from the Big Bend stretching out to parts of the Carolinas. We've got high tide. That's going to make a big impact on that coastal flooding. So be aware that flash flooding risk is going to be there through at least Thursday. And on top of that, we've got at the coast what we're really concerned about, that storm surge. We know what happened with our eye storm last year with Hurricane Ian in parts of southwest Florida with the wall of water that came on shore. And anywhere you can see Cedar Key is right in the center of that. 8 to 12 feet is a big deal, guys. We're going to likely see storm surge on the East Coast as well. And of course, those strong winds that the mayor mentioned, knocking down trees, power outages. Make sure you're charging up all your devices and you have extra batteries. All that kind of stuff is going to go a long way in the next couple days.
Got to be prepared for days without power, potentially.
Exactly.
All right.
Thank you, Angie. Well, now to the fallout this morning from two major hearings involving former President Trump and the court cases he's involved in.
Yesterday, the judge overseeing the federal election interference trial announced that trial is going to start on March 4th of next year, just one day before Super Tuesday. Trump responded saying he's going to appeal that decision, though legal experts tell us decisions involving court dates are not subject to appeal. At the same time, Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, was in an Atlanta courtroom. He took the stand in a hearing involving his request to move his Georgia election interference case to federal court. NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett has the latest.
Hey there, the former president now faces 4 criminal trials in 4 different places as he heads into a busy presidential campaign season next year. But at least one federal judge is making it clear she plans to treat him just like anyone else.
As the Republican primary heats up next spring, so might a criminal trial about the last presidential election. A judge in Washington, D.C., penciling in March of 2024 for federal prosecutors to begin their case against Donald Trump for trying to overturn the 2020 election. Judge Tanya Chutkan rejected the former president's bid to delay the trial until after next year's election, emphasizing the public's interest in seeing this case resolved in a timely manner.
The trial date could slide, but not because Mr. Trump is going to prevail on appeal.
The Republican frontrunner's political calendar now on a collision course with his trials, and his rivals are pouncing.
You don't go with someone who's going to be in a courtroom longer than they're going to be campaigning.
That March 4th date in Washington, the same day Georgia prosecutors have asked for their state trial to start on election interference. And it's the day before Super Tuesday, when more than a dozen states hold their Republican primaries. It's also just 3 weeks shy of Mr. Trump's trial in New York, where he stands accused of falsifying business records to cover up an alleged affair before the 2016 election. 2 months after that, another trial set for his alleged mishandling of classified documents in Florida. Mr. Trump has denied all wrongdoing in each case, continuing to attack the prosecutors online, while in a courtroom in Georgia, his former chief of staff took to the witness stand for nearly 5 hours. Mark Meadows defending his own actions from around the last election as he tries to move his Fulton County racketeering case over to federal court.
They want to put him on the stand for a limited purpose, which is for him to claim that he was acting in the scope of his official duties.
But that effort was undercut by another Republican at the heart of that case, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who testified that infamous call he fielded from Mr. Trump asking for him to find votes in Georgia was only about helping the Trump campaign.
Now, the judge in Georgia says he will rule promptly, but in the meantime, all 19 defendants in that case, including Mr. Trump, are set for arraignment on those state charges on September 6th. Back to you.
All right, Laura, thank you so much.
Let's now bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalas. Hey, Danny, good morning. So let's start with Mark Meadows in court yesterday. As we just heard, many people were surprised that he took the stand. He spent 5 hours answering questions. What are your takeaways from yesterday's hearing?
Well, here's the thing. Mark Meadows doesn't have a high burden to meet. It's really just a preponderance, and he doesn't have to show that his claim of a federal defense, specifically under the Constitution and even more specifically under the Supremacy Clause, he does not need to show that it's a winner. He just needs to show that it's plausible, whatever that means. It doesn't need to be highly likely to succeed, just plausible. And I think the defense's strategy by putting him up there for so long and even subjecting him to cross-examination, which I'm sure he was very prepared for. The reports I read seem to indicate that he had his canned answers ready to go. But by talking about how much he believed he was working at the direction of the president and that investigating interference with elections is a federal, something that falls within his federal duties, all he had to do was convince the judge that it was a plausible defense. So with that standard and the fact that his case is already in federal court, removal is not a request. You file a notice and you're in federal court. It's the DA's job to try and drag him back down to state court.
Right. An important distinction there. Danny, if we could switch gears and talk about the March 4th trial date in the federal election interference trial, one of the special counsel's investigation. So the judge held a pretty tough line against arguments that doesn't give the former president's team enough time to prepare, to go through all the discovery, and also that it would interfere with Trump's presidential campaign. Walk us through this.
Yeah, if I were defense counsel, I would have asked for a 2026 trial date, and I would have known that I was never going to get a 2026 trial date because this is federal court. And even if it ends up, by the way, there's a chance this trial could go forward in 2026. but that will not be because of anything the judge chooses. And by that, I mean federal courts will set these short trial dates, but things happen. They get moved. Maybe they'll move it a month or two at a time. Maybe they'll move it 3 months. But that doesn't mean that this trial won't go forward in 2026, although it's mind-boggling to think that it could even be a possibility. It's just that the judge was never going to schedule a trial date that far out. But look, if you're the defense, you ask for the sun, the moon, and the stars and hope the judge splits the difference and maybe gives you one in 2025, which is still a huge win for the defense because so much of all of the federal defense cases for Trump involve delay. Because if he can get past inauguration, then Donald Trump can put in an attorney general who will make this case go bye-bye. And if that's not an option, then he'll try to pardon himself.
Danny Savalas, as always, thank you so much.
Turning now to North Carolina, where an investigation is underway following a deadly school shooting on the UNC Chapel Hill campus. Officials arrested the suspect and are now searching for a motive and the weapon used during the attack. One faculty member was killed. NBC News correspondent Adalia is in Chapel Hill with the latest. Ali, good morning.
Yeah, Joe, just 24 hours ago, this campus was on total lockdown. A really scary start to the semester here.
Just 1 week after classes began at UNC Chapel Hill.
Possible active shooter on campus.
A tragedy that's become all too familiar at schools nationwide.
Has a 9mm possible Asian male.
I'm grieved to report that one of our faculty members was killed in this shooting. This loss is devastating.
After the initial call for shots fired, the entire campus went on lockdown. A school alert warning an armed, dangerous person on or near campus. Go inside now. Avoid windows. Heavily armed officers swarmed the campus. Some students walking down the street with their hands up. Some sheltering in place.
So immediately we all just stayed hiding in the stalls, squatting on the toilets, just scared. We didn't know what was happening.
Other terrified students fleeing through a first-floor window, backpacks dangling. An elementary school across the road also placed on lockdown. Then, less than 90 minutes after the terrifying ordeal began,
I think that's him.
A suspect was taken into police custody, captured live by our NBC News Raleigh affiliate WRAL.
To actually have the suspect in custody, it gives us an opportunity to figure out the why and even the how.
And 4 hours after the chaos began, police giving the all clear. But students left deeply shaken.
Honestly, it makes me feel a little bit sick because this is a situation that we really shouldn't even have to be worrying about.
And those who knew the suspect, stunned.
Because I would have never guessed that he would be the kind of person who could possibly be capable of this kind of thing.
And Joe, the community here waking up to a string of lingering questions, including how and why this happened. The FBI Charlotte office is assisting local law enforcement in the investigation. We expect that could take weeks, but certainly an all too familiar part of back to school season, as we saw just play out yesterday. Joe.
All right. Ali Adalia, North Carolina. Thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.